Hello and welcome to Solar Alberta's 2024 Solar Series. Today's session is called Optimizing Your Solar PV Array. We were delighted to have so many people register for this event. We actually had 300 registrations, so probably one of our biggest seminars of the year. Please note that we will be recording this webinar for future distribution. My name is Heather McKenzie and I am the Executive Director at Solar Alberta. I'd like to take a minute to acknowledge that I'm hosting you today and working day to day from Amiskwaciwaskahegan, also known as Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, which is located on Treaty 6 territory and the homelands of the Métis Nation. Treaty 6 territory is the traditional gathering place and home of many Indigenous peoples, including the Papaches, Nehewaka Cree, Saulteaux, Dene, Blackfoot, and Nakota Sioux, nations whose ancestors have cared for and nurtured these lands since time immemorial. Today, we'll be hearing from Stephanie Westland, Dan Boutel, Justin Smalley, and following their presentation, there will be a question and answer period in which you can all participate. The entire session will wrap up in an hour and a half. In an effort to increase accessibility, we have enabled closed captioning for this presentation. You can turn the captioning on in the toolbar at the bottom of your Zoom screen. During our Q&A period, we'll be using the Zoom Q&A box for questions rather than the chat box. So please enter your questions in that section. Also, please click on the little thumbs up symbol to upvote questions that you like. Before we move forward, we're going to do a quick poll to get a sense of who we have joining us today. So please take a minute to answer the question popping up on your screen. And just want to make sure that that goes. Oh, there it is. Wonderful. Okay, while some are still doing the poll, I want to encourage you to take a minute to pop your name, land acknowledgement, and any contact info that you're comfortable sharing in the chat now and throughout the event so that others can look you up on LinkedIn or email you and hopefully start some new relationships. All right, thanks so much for participating. Let's see the results there. Oh, wow, lots of solar curious folks here today. Okay, great. So we're going to have a really interesting discussion. We got some professionals in the room. Hopefully you can chime in the chat as well if you've got some knowledge to share, and then some students with us today. I wasn't expecting a lot of students today with the start of summer. I thought they'd probably be taking a rest, but thanks for the few of you who have joined us as well. Never too much learning for some people. All right, just a little bit about Solar Alberta before we start. This is actually our 33rd year of operation. Albertans have been excited about solar energy for quite a while, eh? And we're a nonprofit society that is dedicated to accelerating Alberta's transition to a just and sustainable energy future. We do so by advocating, educating, and serving as an industry and community hub for solar energy. Our membership is made up of over 480 individuals and over 155 businesses. We also have over 21,000 followers. We provide a number of services, including managing a solar directory through our website. In this way, we act as a bridge for installers and suppliers and other solar-related businesses to connect with their customers and clients. You can see a screenshot of the directory here on this slide and a link to it in the chat. I think our directory got 48,000 hits last year, so it's kind of well used. In addition to our website services, we run a number of educational programs, including our solar show, this solar seminar series, and a number of in-person and online networking events each year. Recordings of our previous solar show sessions and all previous seminars can be found on our Solar Alberta YouTube channel. Our next series session will take place on July 25th at noon, and we're going to be learning about how to invest in community solar projects. Registration for that session can be completed through the link in the chat. It will be particularly relevant for those of you who already have a full rooftop, or for those of you who don't have a roof, like if you're a renter or if you are living in an apartment and you don't have a solar appropriate roof, please join us for that. In addition to the free public education we also provide affordable professional development classes and workshops for those in the solar sector or those transitioning into it. Super excited to share that we're having our first in-person solar PV commissioning, operations, and maintenance course since before COVID on July 27th and 28th. And actually, this is our first ever in Calgary. So that's kind of exciting. We're going to have it at SAIT. Additionally, this fall, we're going to be once again running a number of online courses for professionals or those transitioning into the sector. They're Tuesday and Thursday evenings. They usually run for 3 to 5 nights over 2 to 3 weeks. And you can register for all of those at the course that's being, the link that's being provided in the chat. Recordings of our courses are also available for sale alongside our paid workshops in the solar training video section of the website. And in other education-related news, we're pleased to announce the second ever Solar Alberta Diversity Scholarship. This scholarship is intended for equity-deserving individuals. Through the scholarship, we are seeking to promote inclusivity, amplify historically marginalized voices, and encourage diverse participation in the solar and solar-related sector. We are awarding $2,000 to one equity-deserving individual registered in any Alberta training program that aligns with our mission. And we're accepting applications until July 31st. Eligibility details and the application are available by clicking on the link in the chat, and we're very thankful to Enbridge for sponsoring this scholarship. In addition to providing education about solar, we also advocate for it. We are currently rising up for renewables. We have free lawn signs available for pickup in 11 municipalities, and also now we're offering free delivery in 8 municipalities around the province. So we're really thankful to our dedicated volunteers for making so much free delivery of free signs possible. We have template letters as well for you to use on the website, asking the government of Alberta to eliminate the new and discriminatory buffer zones that they have established impacting renewable energy. Your support for our advocacy efforts is super important, so please click on the link in the chat to make a free sign order or find our template letters today. And if you're not already, just want to encourage you to join us as a member. We're constantly evolving our member services, and some of them include discounts on our courses, workshops, access to member-only content, and more. Individual membership is just $35 and can be purchased at the link in the chat. You could also consider volunteering or donating with us to be a general volunteer. The link for that is going to go in the chat as well. So I hope you'll consider those options for involvement. Now, without further ado, I'd like to take this opportunity to give a shout out to Firefly Solar for sponsoring this year's seminar series. We really couldn't offer all this amazing free content without the support of our sponsors. We are always interested in developing more partnerships for our events. If you or your company want to work with us to educate the public about solar or solar-related technologies, please don't hesitate to reach out. Now I'd like to introduce our speakers for the session. Today we have Stephanie Westland. Stephanie is our solar training lead for Solar Alberta. She manages the solar training program as well as represents Solar Alberta in the Calgary area. She's a skilled communicator and collaborator who is passionate about working towards a just and sustainable energy future in Alberta. Prior to joining Solar Alberta, she was self-employed as a researcher and freelance academic editor. She is a published author and holds an MA in Resources and the Environment and a PhD in Peace and Conflict Studies. Stephanie grew up in the foothills of southern Alberta and enjoys spending time outdoors, especially walking, hiking, biking, cross-country skiing, and working in her garden, which gets a little bigger every year. We also have with us today Justin Smalley. Justin is a University of Alberta engineering graduate and a solar energy enthusiast. In 2019, while serving on the board of the Inglewood Community League of Edmonton, he spearheaded a project to install a solar energy system on their building. This experience revealed significant issues in how energy rates are communicated to Albertans. Motivated by these insights, Justin has committed himself to improving energy rate transparency across the province through education, advocacy, and innovative software solutions. And also, last but not least, we're going to hear from Dan Boutel. Dan is an experienced electrical engineer and sustainable energy advocate. Having spent the last 15 years working in Alberta Tech in various engineering and technical leadership roles, and the last 4 years as a residential solar microgenerator. As the Solar Club Manager at Utility Network and Partners, Dan oversees the continued growth and expansion of the Solar Club, helping to streamline the educational and onboarding stages for aspiring new solar microgenerators, while continuing to build industry-leading benefits and reward streams to help members realize a maximized rate of return on their investment in solar. So welcome to the three of you. I'm going to turn the mic over to Stephanie now, and I'll turn my screen over to her as well. And I'll join you again for the Q&A after. Stephanie? Welcome to the screen.
Thank you, and hello. So as mentioned, I am the solar training lead at Solar Alberta, but today I'll be talking to you from the perspective of a microgenerator since January 2022. And my focus will be understanding how your home uses energy and changing habits around appliance use after you get a solar PV system. Then I'll delve into a little bit of energy monitoring and managing expectations around your solar system. So let's delve into Alberta's microgeneration regulation, which allows Albertans to meet their own electricity needs by generating electricity from renewable energy sources. The maximum size of a home's system is based on the home's annual average energy usage. And so when calculating the maximum size of a PV system, an installer will review the homeowner's energy bills from the previous 12 months. Because we are looking at energy production over the period of a year, your solar system in Alberta will usually underproduce from November to February and overproduce from May to August. The graph on this slide shows a typical solar production curve in Alberta. You can see that not much energy gets produced from November to February because there is much less sunlight during these months. The production from May to August then makes up for these winter losses. And when microgenerators are producing excess electricity during these months, they receive credits for what they feed to the grid. This means that homeowners can improve upon the number of credits they receive and therefore the estimated payback time for their installation by reducing their energy consumption or performing energy efficiency upgrades after their solar installation has been completed. My fellow presenter, Dan, will be sharing more information about solar-specific retail plans, which allow you to opt into different electricity rates, higher in the summer and lower in the winter, if you are producing more energy than you need at certain times of the year. Now, let's look at the ways you might consider changing some of your energy use habits. One thing that happens when people install solar is that they start to adjust their schedules so that they are using more energy from the sun to power appliances as much as possible. Because your home is still tied to the grid, it's important to remember that all electricity consumed from the grid has transmission and distribution fees added to it. Now, your utility bill will include two components. One of those is fixed transmission and distribution fees. These fees will not change regardless of how much of your own electricity you are using in the month. There are also variable fees, and it's these ones that you can lower by consuming more of your own energy. When you install a solar PV system, it makes sense to shift some of your energy use habits from night to day. So you are running appliances and charging devices from the sun, and that way you're not paying variable fees on the electricity. Obviously, you might want to adjust that practice on dark and rainy days or in the winter months. My partner was recently comparing the transmission and distribution fees that we pay with one of his coworkers who also has solar, and he realized that we can probably save about another $25 a month if we take better care in using a bit more of the energy when the sun is shining. All this said, if you do not have a solar system or your solar system does not fully cover your electric usage and you have an electric vehicle, it still makes sense to charge your EV overnight when fewer neighbors are using electricity because it reduces demand on the grid as a whole. So just a reminder that the suggestions I'm giving today are intended for people who are generating their own electricity. Also, when there's a grid alert in Alberta, you will hear entirely different suggestions. And unless you have battery energy storage to back up your solar system, you will also lose power in the case of a rotating blackout. So be sure to pay attention to all grid warnings. This now moves us to the next important point, which is how do you know how much electricity you are making and consuming? Many people who have a solar system use an app to monitor their energy usage and change their behaviors around energy consumption. I'll show you some examples of the ways you can use this app in a few minutes, and my fellow presenter, Justin, will also be talking a little about these apps. So when you use an app that tracks both how much energy your system is making and how much energy you are using, you begin to start to stagger the use of your large appliances so that you stay within your own energy production. For example, depending on the size of your solar system and the time of day, you might not be able to run your washer and dryer and bake a cake all at the same time without importing some electricity from the grid. But as you monitor your system and get to know how much energy each appliance uses, you can make decisions about, for example, doing laundry in the morning and baking a cake in the afternoon. Another way of changing your habits around electricity use might be to use a smaller appliance in place of a larger one, such as an air fryer or microwave oven instead of an electric oven. Or if you are purchasing a new oven, you might consider a double oven, where you can choose to cook in the small oven as much as possible, which uses less energy than a large single oven. Induction cooktops are also more energy efficient than electric cooktops by approximately 10 to 15%. And the added bonus is that they heat water in a very short time. At this point, I do think it's worth looking at the main electricity users in our homes. If your household is anything like mine, you maybe don't initially realize how much electricity your clothes dryer is using. I developed the categories on this slide based on some personal experience, as well as a bit of internet research, and you can investigate this in more detail by searching for appliance energy use. Some appliances, like electric ovens and clothes dryers, use quite a lot of energy. In my own family, after we got solar and realized how much energy our dryer was using, we decided to hang dry our clothes more often and use the dryer less. And recently, when our old dryer stopped working, we bought a heat pump dryer instead, which uses a lot less electricity. And we still continue to hang dry most of our clothes. Also, appliances like refrigerators use quite a lot of electricity over the period of a year because they are running all the time. This means that regular cleaning behind the fridge and vacuuming the coils to remove dirt and debris will improve its efficiency. Your home also has medium electricity users, and often these are appliances that we only use once in a while, like a blow dryer or a vacuum. And sometimes, as I mentioned on the last slide, it makes sense to use one of these smaller appliances in place of a bigger one, such as an air fryer or toaster oven instead of an electric oven. And finally, there are small electricity users like a clock radio, as well as charging a phone or tablet. I've also added one LED light bulb on the list of small electricity users. But if you have a lot of lights turned on in your house and they are turned on all day, combined, they end up using quite a lot of energy. A study by Natural Resources Canada calculated that lighting accounts for about 3.5% of the average Canadian's home energy use. The same can be said for TVs or gaming consoles if there's a lot of screen time in your home. We also need to be aware of phantom load, which is also known as vampire electricity. It's estimated that standby power consumption in the average home ranges from 5 to 10% of household energy consumption. According to NRCan, 5% would be enough energy to power your fridge for a year. One study suggested that up to 40% of annual energy consumption of electronic devices occurs actually when they're turned off, and the average home has between 20 and 40 devices that are drawing phantom power. In Canada as a whole, it's estimated that phantom power totals more than 5.4 terawatt hours, which is the equivalent of the annual power consumption of about 300,000 households. So when we're talking about phantom power, we're mostly referring to appliances and devices that draw power when they're in standby mode. Things like computers, televisions, cable boxes, internet boxes, essentially anything that's designed to be easily woken up and ready for use, as well as anything with a remote control. Another source of phantom load is chargers that are plugged into the wall, but are not charging a device. These chargers are still drawing power. And NRCan suggests that you consider creating a charging station where all of the chargers are plugged into a single power bar. This will allow you to easily monitor their use and turn them off all at once. The only way to guarantee that appliances, devices, and chargers are not drawing power is to unplug them from the wall or outlet or into a power bar that can be turned off. As I noted a few slides earlier, I highly recommend using an energy monitoring app to understand how much energy you are, or how you are using energy, how much solar energy your home is self-consuming at any given time, how much energy you are exporting to the grid, and then give you an idea of when and where you might like to make some changes. This slide shows some screenshots from earlier this month from the monitoring app that came with my solar system. On the left, you can see my app graphs our home's energy balance to compare electricity production and consumption over the day, including the amount of self-consumption and how much we've taken from the grid. The graph on the right shows more details about production and consumption. The orange is the energy we imported from the grid, the blue is solar energy we self-consumed, and the green is the overall solar production. As you can see from the orange, most of the energy we imported happened overnight. These two screenshots from my app show examples from approximately 1 year apart. In the image on the left, you can see the large spikes that happened when we were doing laundry. This was before we replaced our washer and dryer with more energy efficient models. The image on the right, which you'll remember from the previous slide, shows what it looks like with the more energy efficient appliances, including a heat pump dryer. As you can see, we can now do laundry, and there's still room within our solar production to use other electric appliances at the same time. If you don't have energy monitoring as part of your current solar system, your installer can give you a quote on adding it to your system. And if they can't support you in this way, we encourage you to check in with one of the other installer members on our directory. Also, a friend of mine uses a home energy monitor that's external to their solar system, but it's still connected to it. And they shared some of their information so that I can show you an alternative. This type of monitoring provides appliance-specific real-time monitoring. There are various monitors available, and they start around $200 and go up to about $600, depending what you're looking for. Next, I'd just like to talk about managing expectations around solar. As mentioned, your solar system will be sized to your home's electrical needs over the previous year. Sometimes people increase their electricity consumption after installing solar, such as adding an EV, air conditioner, or hot tub, and then are disappointed that their system no longer meets their energy needs. By way of example, our system was sized to 99% of our usage when we got it. However, a few months later, we replaced our gas range and oven with an electric or an induction stove, and we added a short-range electric vehicle, both of which increased our electricity consumption. So now our system is producing below our current energy needs. At some point, we might decide to add more panels, but for now, we're looking at ways of reducing our electricity consumption. So of course, the opposite also holds true. Homeowners can reduce their electricity consumption or perform energy efficiency upgrades after their solar installation has been completed, such as installing more efficient appliances or reducing their electricity consumption in the ways that I talked about earlier. And finally, I just want to draw your attention to Frank Crawford from Passive House Alberta, who gave a seminar at our 2024 solar show about some of the techniques that can be used to avoid electrical service upgrade and how to reduce your home electricity consumption, including some discussions of load share devices and smart electrical panels, which are things that I didn't touch on today. You can watch Frank's presentation for free on our YouTube channel. The link is being placed in the chat. And with that, I would love to turn the screen and mic over to Justin Smalley. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie. While I get my slides pulled up, I'm going to be building on what Stephanie was talking about, specifically with respect to self-consumption and digging a bit more into the math behind it. If math is not your thing, don't worry. I'm trying to keep it as high level as possible while giving little hints of ways people can that are mathematically inclined or spreadsheet warriors can dig into it themselves more. Let me see if I can set this as full screen. Oh, well, that's close as we're gonna get. We're gonna keep the top bar in. Thought I figured that out, but I guess not. Okay. So please, my beautiful slide templates, please enjoy them. All right, so we'll start off with a few concepts, specifically with what self-consumption means. So typical home in Alberta that has solar panels, grid tied, no batteries. At nighttime, you're going to be importing 100% of your electricity from the grid. Whereas during the day, you're going to be consuming some of the electricity that you consume, or consuming some of the electricity that gets generated and exporting the excess of that back to the grid for grid credits. So the electricity that you're using, we call your self-consumption. And another variation of this, say you have a cloudy day, you're only producing little bit of data or a little bit of electricity, and you have, or if you have a large load, then you'll be self-consuming everything that you generate, as well as importing some extra that you have to pay for. So with that in mind, your self-consumption is what you've generated and consumed within your house, but haven't exported. Now, the trick behind this is you're not going to see this on your electricity bill. You're not going to see this in your solar production app unless you have a consumption monitor that's added onto it. And most people don't because it costs extra. And so you have to calculate this self-consumption value yourself. And how you do that is you take your production, that's how much you've produced from your solar panels. You get that from your solar app, and you subtract from that whatever you export. And you have to get that from your electricity bill. So these are just a sample of different companies. They're not a comprehensive list by any means. So one more concept I want to go over before we dig into our case study is how your bill is calculated and where you get the money from. So on your bill, you'll get a credit for whatever you export, and you get that at the rate of your electricity charges, and you'll be charged whatever you import from the grid into your house at the electricity rate plus the delivery rate. Now, in Edmonton, the delivery rate is relatively constant at about 8 cents a kilowatt hour. That it goes up over time and it fluctuates a little bit, but it's relatively constant. In Calgary, that number for delivery fluctuates a little bit more, between anywhere from 6 to 15 based on how it's calculated, but an average of 8, it's a pretty good estimate as well. And to be honest, I haven't been able to, or I haven't yet calculated that number for the rest of the province, but it will vary from municipality or county or town based on the different delivery or distribution, transmission, riders, and local access fees. The electricity cost on average right now across the province is about 10 cents a kilowatt hour. But that rate can go up to 30 cents if you're using one of the solar-friendly providers. And the next presenter, Dan's going to go into detail about exactly what that means. So I'm not going to talk about it any further here, but just know that that's what we'll be using for most of our case studies. So onto the case study of the clothes dryer that Stephanie was talking about. Our clothes dryer uses 4 kilowatts. It runs for about an hour, and therefore it uses 4 kilowatt hours. As Stephanie said, there's more efficient ones that can use a lot less, but we're going to use this so the numbers work out nice. So the cost on your bill, we're going to go through a couple different scenarios of when you use your electricity. So our first example, you use it during the middle of the day while you're exporting a lot of electricity. So you're using 4 kilowatt hours, but you're self-consuming it. So on your bill, 0 imports, 0 exports. And the net change on your bill is going to be 0 cents. And then just to clarify, your bill itself will, of course, not be 0 cents, but we're just looking at this one section, this 4 kilowatt block of time, and what the impact is on your bill of that. Our second situation in the case study is you use it in the morning or the evening. So in this case, we're importing 4 kilowatts in the morning to run our dryer. But during the day, we're now exporting that same 4 kilowatts, so we get the credit for that. And so the net change on your bill, the electricity rate gets canceled out, and you're actually just paying the delivery rates is the net benefit to your bill, and we're only paying 32 cents for that. Our third situation is we've completely avoided having to use that electricity in the first place. We hang dry our clothes, and we then get to export that same 4 kilowatt hours. So the net benefit of that is we get a credit of 120 cents for that same action. So the numbers themselves aren't super important. They do add up if you consistently are able to do these things over the course of a year. But I guess the important conclusion here is that you're getting the best benefits out of hang drying your clothes, avoiding your electricity use in the first place. You get the second best benefits out of using the electricity that you've generated in your home. And behind that is having to import the electricity and then exporting it back later. So try to optimize your usage based on that. So now I want to jump over into one more concept that can help us think about this through a slightly different lens, and it's the total financial benefit you get from your solar. And the way I like to think about it, and some math that I've come up with, is you calculate what you would have paid without solar, and from that you subtract what you did pay from your bill, and that becomes your net benefit. So a whole bunch of math. Some of you will be scared of this, and some of you will love it. I'll keep it up here for about 10 seconds so that you can go back later and look at it on YouTube if you feel so inclined. But basically what it means is there's three components to it. There's the benefit of the money, whatever you export. There's the benefit from whatever you self-consume. And then there is the excess that you're paying on whatever you import due to those solar rates. Now, just to be clear, those higher solar friendly and microgenerator electricity rates are not a bad thing, and they're definitely a good thing, but they do you are paying extra on whatever you import. So looking at that same case study again from this slightly different lens of the total financial benefit, during the day, we now have that 4 kilowatt hours we're self-consuming, and basically the net benefit for that load of laundry there is 72 cents. Now remember, this is electricity that we would have had to import if we didn't have solar. And so that's why we can count it as a financial gain or financial benefit. The other case where we have to import in the morning and then export during the day, the net benefit of that is 40 cents on your from your solar. So again, it's less. And if you were to hang dry, then you simply get to export that same electricity and get the largest benefit. So conclusions are the same, but you can see that no matter what you're doing, you're getting a net benefit from your solar. So I wanted to, I like looking at it this way because it really drives home that point that you're always going to get a benefit out of solar. And getting near the end, I have one final case study to look at. This is a case study that I went through with a friend of mine. He kept his electricity bills for 5 or 6 years after he got solar installed, and always calculated up in a spreadsheet how much he was exporting. But when we looked at it through the lens of self-consumption, we found that he was actually getting 50% more benefit than he otherwise than he actually knew. So I thought that was really interesting. One other interesting thing about this is it took them about 5 years to switch from regular electricity rates to the micro generator friendly ones. And you can see a big increase in the top right graph there about how much revenue he was actually generating at that point in time. So conclusions, yeah, same as Stephanie. If you want to optimize the financials behind your solar and reduce your payback period, step one, keep reducing electricity as much as you can. Step two, use the solar friendly and micro generator rates. And number three, load shift. Try and shift as much of your usage from nighttime to daytime when you're or when it's sunny out. So that's the end. You want to get in touch with me, my email address is up there. I'm currently working on building a web app that consolidates all your consumption, production, import, export, electric rates, delivery rates from all these different sources and runs all these calculations discussed here. They're not complex, but it is complex to pull them all in together. It's currently in a closed beta phase, so I'm hoping to launch publicly eventually, but email me if you're interested or have any other questions behind any of the concepts here. And with that, I'll pass off to Dan.
All right, thanks for the intro, Justin. Okay, yeah, big thanks to Solar Alberta for hosting the session. I'm excited to talk about solar pricing and payback optimization in Alberta. So a bit about who we are. My name is Dan Butel. I'm the Solar Club Manager at Utility Network and Partners. And along with managing the Solar Club, I'm also a residential microgenerator and proud Solar Club member for the past several years. The Solar Club is a solar pricing plan offering premium rates and benefits to microgenerators. UtilityNet is a local Calgary-based energy management company with over 45 years of experience in Alberta's retail energy market, offering electricity, natural gas, and internet services to customers all across Alberta. UtilityNet offers the Solar Club in partnership with 35 community retailers across Alberta who offer and promote the program while supporting local community initiatives and sustainable energy endeavors. So let's quickly go over a bit of history about solar pricing programs in Alberta. So back in 2010, the very first solar microgenerator is enrolled onto the grid in Alberta. And I think he actually might be in the session today, Gordon Howell, if I'm not mistaken, so you can give a wave. A few years later, in 2012, UtilityNet launches Light Up Alberta, the first to pioneer using specific solar rates to promote PV generation in Alberta. The Solar Club program was launched in 2019, replacing Light Up Alberta and pioneering the concept of rate switching to help solar microgenerators earn a premium for their surplus green electricity they produce and feed back to the grid. In the following years, a few other companies introduced their own solar-specific pricing programs, including ACE in 2019 and NMAX in 2023. To this day, the Solar Club program has been hugely successful with over $8 million in total value earned by Solar Club members as of 2023. The growth in solar adoption in general has been impressive all around, with the number of microgenerators in Alberta surpassing 20,000 in 2024, of which 25% are Solar Club members. So I've installed solar, now what happens? And as a microgenerator myself, this question was prominently on my mind during the first year of production. I initially wanted to get solar because I liked the idea of my home being a power station and the idea of being able to take an active role in providing sustainable energy to the grid. But in addition, I wanted to make sure it made sense from an investment side of things as well. So I wanted to understand how much surplus credit I could expect, whether there was such a thing as negative power bills, how I should go about calculating my ROI, and how long it would take to break even, and what could be done to accelerate the process so I could recoup or get all this equipment on my roof working for me as fast as possible. So solar pricing plans are designed to help optimize your energy savings and maximize your return on investment. So they work by offering two distinct rates. By switching to the low rate during the winter, you can reduce the cost of your bill by purchasing excess power at a lower rate. In the summer, when your solar system is producing more than you consume, you can switch to the high rate and sell your excess power back to the grid at a higher price, which increases your revenue. By leveraging these two rates, you can shorten the payback period on your solar investment and improve your overall return. It's also important to understand that you can realize value from the power you generate in two different ways. So the first is for your excess power to be sent back to the grid, which is this top picture here. The amount is reflected on your bidirectional meter and will show up as a bill, show up on your bill as a microgen credit. And as Justin alluded to also, the second is through self-usage. So this is the power your home uses from the panels before it reaches the meter. And since this represents power that you would have otherwise had to bring in from the grid, we can think of these kilowatt hours as having the same value as the ones you see on your bill. So the big question is, how do you know when the best time is to switch your rates to make the most from your power exports? So it's most advantageous to capture as much of your net exports on the high rate as possible, so you earn the most when you're selling excess power to the grid. One effective method is to examine your historical usage as to when your system transitioned from becoming a net exporter or to becoming a net exporter during the spring-summer season. This graph represents an example analysis that is provided to Solar Club members showing historical imports and exports over a 15-month history, which also includes a recommended switch date to get on the high rate for the summer. So with this information, I can clearly see the transition point for me would be around mid-April when I should switch to the high rate in order to get more credit for each of the kilowatt hours in yellow here that I send back to the grid. It's important to note also that it's possible to never reach net export status if you're always consuming more than you generate. You would still realize a financial benefit from the self-consumed power, but since your power is used before it hits the meter, there's no additional value to be gained by switching to the high rate. So let's talk a bit about solar pricing plan offerings and benefits. So as we discussed, the big one is being able to switch between the rates, between the high and the low, depending on the season. Some programs offer cashback on all energy imported from the grid on an annual basis. There's also the ability to generate and sell carbon credits. So there's third-party organizations that will track your usage and will you'll be able to realize a separate revenue stream that can result in potentially thousands of extra dollars over the life of your system. Some other benefits include features like being able to transfer your microgen credits to different utilities. Also being able to receive generation and analytics reports to help with switching, as well as being a part of various contests and getting to support local community initiatives from specific retailers. So to better understand how solar pricing plans can provide benefit, I wanted to take you through a real-world case study. And it just so happens that the real-world case that I know the best is my own. So this is my home. It's a fairly typical 1,700 square foot detached home in the south of Calgary. In the fall of 2020, I had a 7.7 kilowatt system installed, which comprised of 23 panels. The total cost was a little over $18,000, and unfortunately, I was a bit too early for the Greener Homes grant, so there was no government incentives or grants applied to the cost of my install. So to have an understanding of payback, we're going to look at the overall system production over the span of last year, along with consumption. So this data was collected by a standalone monitoring system I had installed after my solar installation was done that can track not only generation, but also consumption. So my home generation and consumption has been pretty steady over the years. So we're going to use the historical data from last year to project out a few ROI scenarios to come. So as you can see, my home system was sized quite appropriately, enabling my home to generate about 95% of the energy it consumed over the year. The generation consumption chart on the left there shows a typical pattern with the lion's share of the generation coming from the summer months and reducing into the winter months when I started importing more from the grid. A figure that's important to note here is the amount of power that I consumed, or I self-consumed, which is Justin mentioned, the production minus the exported power. So because it did not export because I used this in my home, so I won't see this on my bill because it won't hit the meters, but I was able to realize the benefit of this power and avoid the distribution and transmission fees that I would have normally paid if I imported it from the grid. So now that we have data to use as a baseline assumption for our annual power generation, we can start making some projections to figure out our microgen savings per year, along with our cumulative lifetime ROI, where we can work out our break-even point. So in this example, we're going to assume that we don't know anything about solar pricing plans or rate switching, so we're going to stay on the same low rate for the entire time. Our savings per year is then based on our total microgen production for the year times the low kilowatt hour rate, while also assuming a 2% year-over-year increase in energy prices. So with these assumptions, the savings from micro-generated power will enable us to break even around year 17, with an overall lifetime ROI after 25 years of a little over 11,000. And with scenario number 2 here, so last time we didn't factor in any impact from solar-specific pricing plans, and now we're going to add that in and see what it does to the model. So factoring all the same savings as the previous slide, only now we're going to assume that in the months where we are net exporting, we're going to switch rates and get credited for those exported kilowatt hours at the high rate in the 7 months out of the year between April and October. Afterwards, we're going to assume we're going to switch back to the low rate in November, so we're not paying a high rate per kilowatt hour when net importing. So as you can see, this has quite a significant impact on the break-even date, bringing it down to 10 years with a lifetime ROI of over 36,000. And we'll do one more here. We're going to add in a few extra solar pricing plan perks that are available to microgenerators. Firstly, we're going to incorporate the benefit of 3% cashback on all power I imported from the grid over the course of the years, which is paid out at the start of the following year. Secondly, as a microgenerator, I can access the completely separate revenue stream by producing and selling carbon credits. So microgenerators can sign up with a third-party carbon offset aggregator company who will handle all the details and help generate and sell the carbon offset credits that you create on the open market. So this figure above was using an online calculator to estimate my annual earnings based on system size. If you want to learn more about this, you can visit solarclub.ca/carbon-offsets for more details on how to participate. So this brings down my payback period another year down to 9 years with a lifetime ROI now at about 46,000. So in addition to getting an idea what our break-even payback looks like, it's also interesting to look at what this works out to be in terms of annualized rates of return. So with my initial investment of 18,000 over 25 years, would have paid back a compounded annualized return of 1.7% with the single power rate, but then introducing rate switching and the high rate bumps it up to 4.4, and then the third scenario with carbon credits and cashback boosts it up even more to around 5.1. And then it's interesting to compare these rates of return to other investments out there. So an investment in solar starts to look pretty comparable to other investments, like definitely dwarfing conventional bank savings and on par with modern day high interest savings and GICs. So when installing solar, even though I've committed a substantial chunk of capital to take an active role in generating sustainable energy, my anticipated return looks to be on par with some other fixed asset classes. So in conclusion, phase 2 is to sign up for a solar pricing plan to maximize your microgeneration credits. And obviously, if there's any questions or you want to get in touch, you can find more information on solarclub.ca, and feel free to contact with me, make contact directly at danbutel@utilitynet.net. We'd be happy to continue conversations or answer any questions. And with that, I'll throw it back to you, Heather.
Thanks very much, Dan. Stephanie, Justin, please join us on stage, the virtual stage. Just a reminder to everybody, there is a separate Q&A box in Zoom. So if you're putting your questions in the chat, we're not going to actually be referencing that because it gets a little overwhelming there. We'd ask that you put your questions in the chat, and you can also upvote people's questions if you're wanting to make sure we get to something before 1:30. So those were really thorough presentations. Really appreciate it. And as we get ready for the Q&A period here, I think I'm going to take a stab at the first question, and then I'm going to start tossing them to you folks. So we'll just get you warmed up here while I take a shot at Rochelle's. So the first question is, in one of the past seminars, it was mentioned that you could overproduce, but this is not generally well known. I've also heard overproducing is not allowed. So which is correct? So the microgeneration regulation is set up for system sizing before you get your solar array. So all of our members are installers. They should be calculating the size of your system based on your previous consumption. So they're not technically allowed to set you up to overproduce. That is the letter of the law in Alberta. And if you find someone trying to set you up to overproduce, they're probably breaking that rule, and that will be a problem. And you may actually have trouble getting connected because NMAX, EPCOR, ATCO, Fortis, all of them, they have to follow the microgeneration regulations. So they're not going to allow a system through that overproduces. Now, what we're talking about today and where you hear overproduction discussed is when someone is sized to their consumption from previous years. And then, as Stephanie was describing, they opt to consume less in the future, and they make choices to reduce their electricity consumption. In those instances, you could be overproducing, and that's where you can see a faster return on your investment. So basically, if you get solar and then get smarter about your electricity use, that's where you can legally overproduce. But you're not allowed to be set up to overproduce in the initial sizing by your installer. So hopefully that clarifies that first question. I know that can be really confusing because some people like to sneak around and get real sneaky and try and size up. But those people usually end up sitting in a very long wait list as the wire providers won't approve it. So they end up sometimes having to even chop off some of their system so that it's not overproducing. So, so hopefully that answers that. We do have actually a webinar about the microgeneration regulation. It's called Microgeneration 101, and it's on our YouTube channel. All right, ready for questions, you three? We'll jump in here. Someone's asking, could you please explain in more detail using solar to offset your variable distribution and transmission charges? I was getting a lot of questions about that. Would any of you want to take a stab at sort of the different types of distribution and transmission costs? I think that notion of variability is confusing folks. Anyone want to jump in on that one?
I can talk about that, sure. So yeah, in Stephanie's presentation, she talked about the fixed and variable costs for the delivery charges. Those the words fixed and variable mean a lot of different things depending on the context of how you're thinking about it. So another way to think about it is the delivery side of your bill. It has dollars per month or dollars per day charges, and it has a whole bunch of dollars or cents per kilowatt hour charges.
Would it be helpful to bring up a bill? I have one right here. I could share it if you like.
Yeah, sure.
You just carry those around on your
No, I saw the question and I pulled it up.
Oh, okay. I was like, I love that you just have that in your in your arsenal. Okay.
Yeah. So there's yeah. So there's a whole bunch of different things there. Transmission, distribution, local access fees, riders. In my opinion, what each of them does isn't really important. There's a process that the Alberta Utilities Commission goes through to approve all of those. And at the end of the day, in Edmonton, at least, what it all adds up to is about $1 per day plus 8 cents a kilowatt hour. When you break it all down and add it all back up. Calgary's pretty similar, and I think, like I said, I haven't actually done the calculations for the rest of the province, but it's probably in a pretty close ballpark, plus or minus. So yeah, the $20 or the $1 per day, you're going to pay that regardless of how much electricity you use, and the 8 cents per kilowatt hour, you're going to pay that on whatever you import from the grid.
Mhm.
but you don't get that when you export.
Mhm.
I don't know if that answers the exact question. What was the exact phrasing of the question?
The exact phrasing was, could you please explain in more detail using solar to offset your variable distribution and transmission charges?
Yeah,
So
so
basically,
in that case, the variable is the cents per kilowatt hour. So the less you're importing, the less cents per kilowatt hour you're paying for the delivery fees. And the more that you self-consume from your panels, the less you have to import.
Thanks, Justin. Anything to add there, Stephanie?
Yeah, I think just in terms of that, what I was sharing there, I'll pop it back up again. As you can see on my bill here, it shows actually the basis of how it's calculated. And so you'll see that these distribution charges are fixed. So there's nothing that I can do about them. But if I am working harder to use more electricity when the sun is shining and less at night, then some of these are percentage based and some of them are based on the amount of energy. And so that's how you reduce your variable charges.
Thank you for that. Pradeep's asking here, I see the benefits of solar club pricing with two different rates in the summer and winter. I wonder where the solar pricing companies make their money. Dan, you want to tell us what that looks like on your end?
Sure. Yeah. So basically, all solar specific pricing plans, like all retailers that offer it, they offer the same high rate and the same high rate is at 30 cents per kilowatt hour, and the low rate varies depending on what the current rate is being offered. So essentially, it comes down to microgeneration regulation, which stipulates, I think, as previously alluded to, that the rate at which a retailer buys surplus electricity from a microgenerator must be the same rate at which it sells electricity to the microgen customer during a billing period. So a retailer will pay the customer this high rate for the amount of solar power they generate, and in turn, the retailer invoices the Alberta Electric Systems Operator for a refund based on this same rate for the electricity that was provided. So it's essentially a factor of the microgeneration regulation that whatever the rate that is charged, it just has to be the same as what you're paid as a generator, and that the retailer will invoice that to ASO, the Electric Systems Operator, and receive a refund through them.
Interesting. Okay, another question here. Read a lot about solar clubs. I guess I'm going to phrase this a little bit differently because I don't want to put you on the spot and have to like put down other people. But what would you say are the differences between your program, ACE's program, NMAX's program? Kind of why would people maybe go one route or another? And if that's too awkward to answer, you don't have to, but maybe you could just highlight some of the differences and the unique aspects.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. So yeah, I mean, from a rate perspective, as mentioned, the high rate is the same across the board. So really, there's no bad options from a benefit point of view. You can still realize the same high rate. The differences mostly lie in where I guess the community dollars are going, where the retailer is based. Like that's a big component. So a lot of retailers that offer the solar club are based in specific communities around Alberta. They support local initiatives and local community activities. So your dollars stay in Alberta and help fund local activities. That's one difference. There's also differences in terms of specific other perks and benefits that are realized. Like for example, the 3% cashback is a solar club exclusive benefit, but different clubs decide how they want to feature their program and what benefits they want to provide to their members. So like for example, the carbon credit offset is something you can access across the board. We also have a bunch of contests that we like to run throughout the year. For right now, we have one called Shine and Win, where we're giving away $1,000 and 1,000 air miles every month until the end of the summer. So small things like that, you can, it helps to decrease your payback period just a little bit more, to add in that extra year in the third scenario I communicated there to just take a little bit more off the top of that payback period.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've actually noticed that also there's a lot of discrepancy between the different retailers and the quality of the bills you receive, the detail. And so I started to say, oh, I want to get the most accurate or detailed bill. And so for me, that's a little bit more of a priority than many other people. But it's interesting as you compare between the different retailers. Some do have a little bit more transparency than others, it seems. And for some of us, that really matters a lot too. So it's
For
neat
sure,
to
yeah. I think at UtilityNet anyway, I know that's an area that we agree is important to communicate. And I think, and from the bills I've seen, the breakdown in terms of the fee structures are the most clear. And maybe it's almost it's more information than you care to see, but at least you understand where your rates are coming from when you can see the components of the distribution charges, for example, and nothing is rolled up in an attempt to kind of abstract away, the source of fees. So that's something we try and communicate openly, as well as with the solar information in terms of trying to share for every user, send out a report at the beginning of every year, similar to the example that I showed there, outlining your previous usage history to try and nail down exactly where that transition point should be. So that's something that we value as well.
Yeah, I noticed the one thing that's too bad about when you do switch retailers is you lose some of that usage history often, which can be a little sad if you're enjoying tracking your tracking yourself. So, and you have to use an app like Justin's developing to have your own little private tracking there. This question is to follow up on the question about solar clubs. Okay, heard about selling carbon credits. Is it worth it? Who does it? Any recommendations? I will say we actually have 2 full webinars on carbon credits. So I don't want to get into that too much today. I think that Dan kindly mentioned it can save you about $300 a year. There are webinars about that on our YouTube channel. I will say that yes, if finances are a barrier for you, it can help, but you should remember that you're selling your green attribute. So any electricity that you are generating after selling your offsets is just electricity. It's not green electricity. You're selling your green attribute, which means that you are no longer green. And so that's really important if you're an environmentalist. If you're an environmentalist, but you also don't have enough money, then that's fine. Go ahead and you can be green after your contract ends with the offset folks. But you are selling your greenness. And so I do think people don't fully understand that what a carbon offset is. And so it's super important to understand these things and to get the full picture. So super helpful for affordability reasons, but not super helpful if your objective is to battle climate change. So it depends on your motivations, I think. Anything you folks want to add a little bit there about carbon credits? I know that wasn't the main focus, but happy to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's definitely a big topic, but I guess to learn a bit more initially and to find out what your options are, yeah, the Solar Club page, if you go to solarclub.ca/carbon-offset, you'll see 3 partner carbon credit aggregators that we work with as part of our carbon credit offset program. So all of their websites feature really good FAQ sections and calculators where you'll be able to work out, the estimated carbon credit value you could achieve, and certain limitations when it comes to grants. That there's certain grants, I think, that don't allow you to retain your carbon credit ownership. So all of that can be learned through these websites. That'll give you a big leg up, and then yeah, definitely dive into the other content from Solar Alberta there.
Yeah, and thanks for mentioning that. We do have a couple offset folks on our directory as well. So if people are looking for an offset company, that's also one that will be held accountable to our business code of conduct. You can check our directory. That is interesting because in Alberta, there are very few regulations when it comes to these things. So sometimes there is benefit of selecting companies that are affiliated with us because we have one extra accountability mechanism. If they are treating you poorly, we do have a code of conduct that we can ask them to adhere to. Whereas other than that, you're kind of just dealing with the Alberta's Consumer Protection Act, so which is challenging to deal with. So just a plug for choosing folks who are associated with us and that you can hold accountable through us. How does one access the 3% cashback advantage, please?
Yeah, all you have to do there is just become a Solar Club member, and automatically you'll get 3% back at the start of next year from all the power you import. So it's kind of a nice little extra perk, puts money back in your pocket just for being a solar generator and a member of the solar club.
Interesting. Yeah, thank you for that. Another one for you, Dan. You're getting loads here. I'm gonna have to tell people to throw some nerdy stuff Justin's way too. Get into those graphs. Okay. Will has read that some solar club retailers will pay higher than the 30 cents per kilowatt hour. Say the RRO hits 32 cents per kilowatt hour, which is great. What about the low rate? Will the low rate fluctuate as well if the RRO is lower than the current low rate offered?
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know if I've heard about ones that pay over or go above 30, but definitely share that. I'd be interested to learn about that. The low rates generally fluctuate across the board, depending on the retailer. So depending on the time of year, I mean, if the RRO is higher at certain points, one can expect retailers to change their rates appropriately or offer different rates depending on what it is. So the low rate typically fluctuates throughout the year, and then if it's more advantageous for you to jump to a lower one, you're typically free to do that, and then so you can pay even lower when you're importing power from the grid, and then jump back to your 30 cent high rate afterwards. But yeah, if you shoot me an email or something, I'd be curious to look into the retailer that you found that's doing higher than 30.
Yeah. It's interesting that whole question around choosing, when to switch and all that. That really changed for us recently because just like Stephanie, when we purchased an electric vehicle, all of a sudden we weren't overproducing as early in the year, right? So it was, historically we would switch our rate in April. And now we have to have a conversation of switching more in like May or June because of having that extra load. So it's not as beneficial to switch as early in the year for some of us if we are size smaller than our usage. So super interesting conversations to be had. Jeffrey's saying, would you be able to list some of the good aftermarket energy monitoring programs or equipment that you can purchase to help determine what devices are consuming power? That's, yeah, like close to an endorsement here. So I don't know if anyone wants to go there, but maybe even some places that folks could look. I know some of our installer members would probably give some recommendations without fear, fear of reprisal. Do any of you want to take a stab at a couple suggestions?
When I was talking, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Stephanie. I think you were first.
When I was talking to the various like friends and stuff, some of the ones that they're using are Emporium or Emporia and Sense. They're not totally happy with some of these. So you definitely, if you're researching what monitor you want, I would both look at the pros and cons before you buy something. Go ahead, Justin.
Yeah, I was gonna, I have on my shopping list of things, I was looking at the Emporia solution that you just talked about there, but I might double check that with that review you just gave. But I know all the inverter companies all have one, like Solar Edge or AP Systems have their own. They just tend to cost a little bit more.
Yeah, and I'll just pipe in the screenshots from my slides there were from the Sense app as well. And just to touch on one of the questions I see in the feed there, whether or not it covers phantom power usage. Sense is kind of interesting where it tries to detect the type of appliance that's being used. I think it was Justin who had that in his presentation, where it tries to assume that it knows that it's a dryer or a fridge that's on. And it also has a category for always on, which is the phantom power appliances. So you can see even when you turn everything off, it tries to guess how much power your house is using just with these random small devices that are always on.
All right, thanks for that. Will the carbon credit disappear with a conservative government, or is the program associated with solar standalone? So carbon credits are not related to the federal. None of this is federal, okay? So what we're talking about is all provincial jurisdiction right now. So we have a conservative government in Alberta, and carbon offsets are currently legal. We have a conservative government in Alberta, and microgenerating is currently legal. So and we had those options as well under the NDP. So a lot of this stuff actually is not as political in Alberta as you might think. You're probably thinking about the carbon taxing, and that's another topic. But when it comes to microgeneration considerations, right now that's all provincial jurisdictions. So yeah, so there's your short answer. Anything you folks want to add about that? There is one thought that I've heard, which is that when carbon offset programs were originally created, the intent was that they would be for additional reductions to the grid, and that you shouldn't qualify for them if you're not doing something new that you wouldn't do otherwise. So I do anticipate that in the near future, the regulators in Alberta will likely ensure that nobody with a current array can have offsets, because that is contrary to the notion of additionality, which is that you should be going above and beyond if you're getting an offset. So I do think that will probably be regulated at some point, because if you're already a microgenerator, it's pretty hard to say that you're doing something additional or new that you wouldn't otherwise have done. So I do think that whether it's conservative or NDP or whoever, I do think at some point they will be reviewing that concept of additionality when it comes to offsets. And I do think we'll see some changes and some tightening up there. But I don't think it will necessarily apply to new microgenerators, would be my suspicion, because the idea is to get you to do things you otherwise would not. Okay. Let's see here. Always fun to get those political questions. All right. Will's asking, can someone explain the prudential that some solar club retailers talk about? Oh, Dan, I had not heard that word. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yeah, that's right. So with some of our rates, actually, so a prudential basically is it can be thought of as a deposit that is put down in order to access lower rates. On various utility net retailers, you'll notice an electricity rate with a prudential at a certain rate, and then at a lower rate, and then one without a prudential has a higher rate to reflect the additional risk, I guess, that represents. But solar club rates do not require a prudential, so that doesn't have anything to do with solar microgen. It's only if you're using getting a natural gas account or a conventional electricity account.
Interesting. It almost sounds like a phone plan. Like, are you paying money down, or are you paying it month to month?
Right. And I guess I should mention also it is a refundable deposit as well. So it's just a
Okay, so it's not a minimum retained type thing. It's a refundable piece. Okay, fascinating. Ooh, Stephanie, here we're coming up to the clothing dryer option. Oh, I guess both of you touched on
I think
dryers.
this is for Justin.
Okay, you're both dryer experts today. Okay, is there not a cost when using the dryer during the day, as you are not not getting a credit for the 4 kilowatt hours that you should have otherwise sold? Should that not be part of the calculation? We're getting into the math here.
Yes. So that is, I did two sets of calculations. So the first set was what it looks like on your bill. And on your bill, it's just a net nothing. But the second calculation I did was looking at the sort of total financial benefit. And in that case, yes, it did have that financial benefit from
Yes.
running it during the day.
I'm now thinking that this person probably asked that question right in between those two parts of your presentation, I bet you, because they were probably thinking about that after your first description, and then you actually asked and answered the same question. So that's great. I think that was a timing issue there. So that's good. Thank you. All right. Do aftermarket consumption monitoring systems show you your phantom power usage? I think you answered recently that there are some that do, not all, but some do. So you could theoretically make sure you're choosing one that does, hey?
Yeah, I just know the one I use does. It has a phantom or an always on section, and which kind of helps you track how much phantom power you have on. Yeah.
It seems like the consumption monitors would all essentially track it, but they just may not all communicate that component. Hey, so it's more about how detailed an analysis they're giving you?
Yeah, and the app that comes like with my solar system doesn't, I don't get that level of information.
Okay.
But I
No.
think with a little bit of effort, you could figure it out. Like turn everything off in the house you can and see how much is left, and um,
Hold
then start
everything else
monitoring.
steady.
Yeah, and
Hold
then
everyone, like do your own little scientific experiment. All
yeah,
else remains the same. Of course, that assumes that you don't have little people going around messing with all of your outlets and turning lights on that they shouldn't be. All right. Andy, philosophical argument. Oh, fun. Oh, I think we were touching on this earlier. When you sell your carbon credits, you cannot say that you produce green energy because you sold that right to someone else. Yes, thank you. I think Andy and I are on the same page, and that's true. So thank you for that point. You are producing, but you're not producing the green. Is there a minimum amount of years to sign in for a microgen contract? I'm thinking that's as a retailer question. Hey, Dan?
Yeah, as a customer, that's how I'm kind of assuming that. Like,
Yeah.
no, you're not locked in for any period of time, and nothing like a cell phone contract where you'd have, cancellation fees or anything like that. So, you're definitely, free to leave at any time. Although, I really don't know why you'd want to. You get to you'd miss out on that high rate. Generally, once you start making more money from your exports, it can gets pretty addicting, and you want to keep on doing that. But there's nothing holding you to that for sure.
Yeah, that's actually really nice and unique in Alberta is just that you do have that power. Now, there are a couple exceptions. I understand that there are some people who, if they have like a bad credit history or they're new to the province, they're not necessarily allowed to switch off the regulated rate. They are forced to stay on that and don't have the same flexibility that the rest of Albertans have, which I understand was why it was so harsh last year when um, extra costs were put on that demographic of people who some of whom don't actually have the choice to move. So we won't get into all the politics of that, but I was learning about that last year when decisions were made that impacted folks who don't have the same freedom that some of us do to switch plans. But for the most part, like probably what percentage of Albertans would you say are currently allowed to just switch retailers whenever they want? Is it a pretty significant chunk?
That's actually a good question. Yeah, I'm not sure what the breakdown is, but
Yeah.
yeah, that is a limiting factor. Yeah.
I might have to keep that on my mind and find out, okay, who is forced to stay on the regulated rate? What percentage of the population are they? So, sadly, those would probably be the least likely to be micro generators because if they have a poor credit history and they're new to the province, they might not be able to afford to get a system at all. So, probably doesn't come up a lot in your day to day. Do you have an electricity price forecast for Alberta for each of the next 5 years? Ian's wondering. Anyone have any forecasting tools they use or places they look? I've actually gotten that question quite a bit in the past. People will be like, what's the forecast? And I never really know where to look for that. Have you folks got ideas?
I think ASO or AUC might have forecasts. I feel like I've seen these in the past, but
Yeah, I was just
don't
gonna say, I
sure.
think it is on one of those. Like I remember seeing it too. I was trying to remember exactly where, but yeah, one of those institutions or industry sources. I'm sure someone will jump in the feed with it, but I think it does exist. We can look it up.
Yeah, I know Tanner's jumped in to say crystal ball. I think that's probably I enjoy that. But yeah, MSA publishes a quarterly report that looks at forward pricing. Hi, Darren. Thanks for that. You guys are quite the tag team, aren't you, Dan? All right, there we go. Am I charged for power at the high rate in the summer at 30 cents? That's an interesting question. Am I charged? Yes, you're always charged whatever you're paying or paid. It's always equal, right, Dan?
Right. Yeah, exactly. You're charged and credited at whatever rate you're on. Right. So that's why you really should use the high rate only in the summer when you're net exporting, so that you're making more credits than you are buying. But it's kind of an interesting question as well too, because you are still purchasing your imported power at a higher rate. So in the summertime when you're on the high rate, it's good to be kind of conscious of this self consumption aspect too, and really making sure you're using the power that you generate, because any power that you import, you would be, that's less credit that you could have had because you're buying additional power on that higher rate. So just something to keep in mind.
It's like all of the discussions we had earlier are just amplified, right?
Right.
Both the costs and the benefits. Everything's just bigger when you're doing the higher pricing. But yeah, that whole matching of prices is regulated in Alberta. You know, what goes in must come out. That's not something that your retailer has a choice over. All right, another question here. You said you get 3% back if you're a Solar Club member. If you're with a company that's part of the Solar Club, are they automatically a member or do they have to do something separate for that?
Yeah, so the Solar Club can be thought of as kind of an umbrella that offers its services through these 35 partner community retailers. So any retailer that offers the program that's called the Solar Club, so they would be able to offer that 3% cashback benefit.
And I see someone asking specifically about Park Power, and they are under your umbrella.
Sure. Yeah.
They are also a member of Solar Alberta too. So, you know, I always say if you're looking for a solar specific pricing plan, you can check our directory. You'll find quite a few there who not only many of whom are under the umbrella, but there are others, and also they're also all abiding by the business code of conduct that we have. So there's a little added protection there as well for your retailers. Okay. Oh, someone's wanting a copy of this. So the slides are not necessarily available, but all this is going to be for free on the YouTube channel. We're recording it and it will be emailed out to you as a link in the coming days, and you can go and you can screenshot Justin's slide. I know that's what they want, Justin. Some of those fun slides with the different images there. I was enjoying those too. So you can have fun taking some screenshots of the webinar once it's up on the YouTube channel. But no, we're not going to shop around the slides themselves because I don't want you to see all of my embarrassing notes where I remind myself how to pronounce things. I guess we could do PDF. That would be one option we'll think about in the future. Okay. Okay, getting some questions here about roof pitch. I had a feeling we might. I will answer that briefly, which is that I don't believe any of us here are experts on roof pitch. And if you're looking at designing and modeling right now, I would recommend you hit up some of our business members. There are some in the chat right now who do design and modeling and can advise on that. This is all pre-solar installation questions. Anything in your planning stages, I would recommend hitting up our business members with those questions. The webinar today is really about those people who already have a system. And so I did not prepare our presenters to answer questions about prior to getting a solar system. So questions about pitch and whatnot, do check in with our installer members on our directory. And also, if you really want to nerd out, we actually offer a whole course on design and modeling. It's very technical, so I don't know if everybody would like it, but you're more than welcome. Stephanie can hook you up with that recorded course, and love it when we get questions about design and modeling. Am I charged for power at the high rate in the summer at 30 cents? Yes, we've already answered that. I think that maybe came up twice. And questions about carbon credits. Sorry, I'm just checking here to make sure we've covered these. When you join the solar club, you still keep the carbon credits. Basically, it sounds to me, Dan, like the carbon credits are kind of an option if you want. They're not an automatic when they join solar club. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. The application process is completely separate. Like basically, we will help you onboard onto one of those partner aggregators, and then everything is managed directly through them.
Okay, great. Question from Winnie here, and this kind of actually, it's kind of neat that this came up because it's like ties back to the very first question you folks answered. But if you overproduce in the summer and don't pull off grid, can you technically get $0 for electricity charges on your bill? The electricity charge component, yes. The variable distribution component, yes. The fixed distribution and administration component, no. Those will always be there. So I feel like that part is so confusing. It doesn't hurt to kind of really lay it out. Do you folks have anything more you want to add there? Because I know that is super confusing.
There's one other case study that I pulled out last minute from my report for time, but it was for the Inglewood Community League of Edmonton. We installed the panels there, and then at the same time reduced our electricity consumption significantly by like over 2/3 by turning off a bunch of electric heaters. And now they're getting credits of $500-600 a month in the summer. So
Yeah. So
they're
like I think that's
exporting
what's
so much that they're getting like cash back.
yeah, and I think that's what's confusing to people is because yes, in those months you're really only seeing the credit because those costs are hidden, right? Because they're coming off of it. So there are still costs there, just like there are costs in the winter months. It's just that you're not necessarily going to see those costs in the summer months. And I think that's probably why it's so confusing because it looks like you're getting, $0 bills, but in fact, you're paying for the distribution component over the course of the year, and it's just not showing up necessarily at that particular point. Definitely hard to communicate, though, isn't it? And particularly confusing when you have a whole bunch of companies going around saying, never pay for electricity again. And it's like, but wait, there are still costs, and they're still going to reduce some of those benefits as you were explaining in your slides, Justin. Hey, so that's super important to realize. Otherwise, you might get a little disappointed when you don't get like maximum credit. Let's do another couple here because we have time. Andy says, in Alberta, are we likely to see time of day pricing anytime soon or other pricing changes that can make battery investments more feasible? I will say that that conversation has shifted a lot in the last few years. Hey, I have heard the government talking a little bit about it, a little bit, not a lot, but a little. And I have seen that some of our partners, as well as the wire providers, who are some of whom are members of ours, are doing a number of pilot programs, pilot projects. I know that the wires folks would like to move in this direction and are really encouraging that. So I'm optimistic, but maybe I'm naive. Are you folks as optimistic as I am that we're going to get some time of day pricing or demand side management tools here?
Yeah, I think I kind of share your optimism. It's likely coming, but just a few years out.
Yeah, working out some kinks. I mean, they talk a lot about this fear around reliability and stuff like that. Well, this is the easy, low-hanging fruit. I mean, I shouldn't call it easy, but it's the low-hanging fruit. It's been done all around the world. So if you're worried about reliability, definitely you move on some demand side management, hey? All right. Can you repeat the typical household stats about phantom load? Stephanie, do you have that slide still?
Yeah, it's 5 to 10%, and they suggest that was from NRCan, and they suggested that you have about 20 to 40 devices in your house at any one time that are using drawing phantom load.
Okay. Thanks for that. We've
It
talked a
helps as
little.
an oh, sorry, I was going to jump in with an example because just from using
Too.
my system, I mean, using my home as I don't know, what's probably an average example. I noticed my phantom load is around 300 watts pretty consistently. And of course, this can vary a ton depending on how many gadgets you have plugged in. And maybe I have more than most, but that's usually what my mine works out to.
Yeah, I have to admit, since reading Stephanie's presentation, I have started using a power bar and turning it off at night because I was definitely one of those people with everything just plugged in and everything's just kind of asleep. And then I thought, I should probably go for that power bar and just crank it all off at night. Why not, right? So it's funny how just even those of us who are kind of aware of this forget to do these things and forget that it actually makes a difference and you become very complacent. So. Well, I just want to say a huge thank you to the three of you for all this excellent information today. We had over 150 people here for sure, and I know 150 more are planning to watch the recording later. So wonderful, wonderful attention. Thanks to everybody who came, to Firefly for sponsoring today, and of course to our staff team pulling off the whole event. I appreciate that. So thank you once again. I'm gonna say it's 1:30 and I want to respect everyone's time. So we're gonna turn it off there, but I hope to see you all at our next seminar in July. Thanks everybody and have a great day.